With Joel Embiid unable to play, the Sixers were supposed to show up, take their beating, and leave the gym in an orderly fashion. Speaking of which, this guy did not get that memo and decided to put on a show that carried his teammates all the way down to the wire, culminating in a playoff career high in points while embarrassing the Celtics coaching staff and reminding us all of who he is, James frickin' Harden. As a coach, there's nothing that frustrates me more than a playoff game where defensive adjustments aren't being made to combat an onslaught like we saw from Harden. He was the only game in town for the Sixers offense while he was on the court, and yet they continued to guard him the same way almost the entire game. Al Horford was his frequent target as they allowed him to drop and give the ball a 10-foot cushion. I suppose to begin the game, it's a sound strategy to see if Harden is feeling it, but the risk is that you're allowing him to get going. By this point in the third quarter, Harden was 10 for 17 for 23 points and 4 assists, and yet they allow him to just dribble into a relatively open 18-footer. I know analytics say let them take these shots, but if you're Boston, make anybody else beat you. Here's another drop as we're nearing crunch time, and while Smart did his best, the idea that you're not blasting Harden to get it out of his hands with 5 seconds in the shot clock is coaching criminality. This was even worse. Harden had an open three if he wanted it, but decides to become part of their pistol action on the right side, which forces a switch of Brown onto him. Good job to get around the handoff as Horford is dropped, but on the flip for the ball screen, Horford is just watching at the elbow as yet another Harden wide open triple rips the net. You might wonder why I'm so frustrated with the defense here, and it's because this is the same issue we saw with Trae Young in the first round that almost forced them to play 7 games. Over the final 4 games of that series, look at his numbers, and the vast majority were simply pick and rolls where Horford would drop way back and Young would abuse him in all variety of finish. The coverage wasn't just for Horford. Robert Williams was also dropping, despite poor weak side spacing by the Sixers that would have allowed for him to blast the ball with 5 seconds in the shot clock and force the Sixers into something much harder. There are so many things you can do to adjust. On a sideline out of bounds, you could have sent Jaylen Brown up to guard McDaniels and kept Williams in the block, then switch the pick and roll with a good defender on him. Instead, it's another drop, and Harden just works Brogdon into the paint for a wide open 15-footer. Aside from pre-switching the pick and roll, you could play box and 1, 2-3 zone, double him on the wing. With this spacing, it would have been easy to send Brogdon on a hard double to force it out of Harden's hands. Instead, he's handling Grant Williams for another easy 15-footer. They wanted to target Williams again by forcing this switch. Why not double him and see if McDaniels can do something with the ball? Instead, he's allowed to do his delayed dribble game with the clock under 5 seconds and gets no help rotation until the ball's already out of his hands. I've been advocating for Harden to post up for years now, and for some reason he passes up another wide open 3 to go to work down low. Maxey is the only other perimeter threat, so don't leave him, but you've got 3 Sixers bunched up on the weak side. Send Tatum over there right away to double while Horford and Brown zone up the backside to cover any skip passes. While Marcus Smart has a defensive reputation, I don't think it's completely merited, as Harden muscles through his verticality for a close shot. Here's another post-up in the fourth, and while the Sixers spacing was better on this one, it's just not okay that Rob Williams is so concerned with a guy that did not take 1 shot all game rather than go double and get it out of Harden's hands. I caught one possession where they did run a second defender at him, and it went very well for the Sixers as their sharpshooter George Niang hits an open 3. Let's see why it worked. By flashing McDaniels to the high post, Brown has to rotate to him. Harden smartly retreat dribbles to pull the double team even farther out, but watch when the pass is thrown, and then watch when Brown begins his closeout. It's 2 steps too late. He could afford to give McDaniels another step of space toward Niang, and had he closed out on time, I doubt Niang gets it off clean. The Sixers were prepared well for the double team with the flash cut to the elbow. The best way to handle this would have been for Brown to go to the ball and Horford to quickly sink down on Reed. Instead, both Tatum and Brown collapse to the ball, and that leaves Tobias Harris completely wide open for the 3. I hope Coach Mazzulla looks at this footage and comes up with a different game plan. But man, it's fun to see Harden go off like this. And if you want the chance to win some money on his production, or any other NBA player, then you have to head over to UnderdogFantasy.com and check out Pick'em, where you can choose 2 to 5 players, then decide on the over-under for specific stats. It's super easy to set up, and you can win up to 20 times your initial entry fee. If you think Harden is going to score a ton of points in Game 2, then get him the action. But it doesn't stop there. You can make it a rival and add players from different teams to make it even more interesting. They've also got drafts where you can compete against me. You think you got what it takes? If you click on the link below and use my promo code BBALL, you'll get a deposit match of up to $100. So if you want a chance to get up to 20 times your money or beat me in a draft, you've got to check out Underdog Fantasy. Use my code BBALL, get up to $100 in matching deposits, and realizing why it's so important to get the damn ball out of Harden's hands. Here's a decent example where they doubled Harden off the ball screen and Time Lord gets within sniffing distance on the closeout and it's not even close to going in, with the Celtics escaping without giving up a point at the end of the first. Okay, so I get why Joe Mazzulla would be reluctant to send a double at him above the three-point line because of those two bombs, which helped the Sixers outscore the Celtics 17-10 from behind the arc. But then we see defense like Smart going on the high side of this pin down, which gives Harden a wide open three. And it's clear they allowed him to be way too comfortable all game long, and it will ultimately doom them. Despite getting torched by Harden, the Celtics played well enough to have control of this game with 2 minutes left, as the Sixers inexplicably let a guy who had gone 0 for 5 in the fourth quarter up to this point attack the weak spot in Horford, but make that 0 for 6. Now, a guy like Smart isn't a shot creator. He's at his best when he's operating out of an offense that can create closeouts for him to attack, like this pick and pop that gets him penetrating to the middle for the kick out. Because of his drive, he gets the rebound, beautiful pass, but Tatum loses his balance. Was he tripped? It doesn't look like it, but maybe part of Harden's shoe clipped his foot, but the refs can't call something unless they're sure of it. The last 2-minute report does say it was an incorrect no call, but Secaucus must have a better replay angle than we have. And those free throws they didn't get proved crucial as the 5-on-4 on the other end finds Maxey hurtling to the basket. Now, Marcus Smart is usually among the league leaders in charges taken, but in this situation, he didn't even start to get into position until Maxey had planted his left foot into the jump. If you're going to be aggressive to the point of recklessness, you have to know the rules and when it's worth risking it. If you're not in legal guarding position before the offensive player begins his motion upwards, it will be a block. This was an easy call, and it gave the Sixers an extra point that they desperately want back. Putting the ball in Tatum's hands is very smart here, as he rejects the screen and collapses the defense. PJ Tucker correctly rotates over, but why is Reed jumping to the midline? That puts him 2 whole steps out of position and makes Maxey think he needs to close out to the corner. The rebound goes right to where Maxey would have been standing, while Tucker had done the traditional box out by turning his whole body away from the basket and only tracking the ball with his eyes when it hits the rim, so he's slow to react to it. This one is tough, as Horford comes flying in from the three-point line to grab another offensive board, and the Sixers defense has been scrambled too much, as Smart makes the good pass to Horford. Let's see how they now defend the pick and roll with Horford involved. Finally, we see a pre-switch with Smart, and that forces Harden to reset, but they had another chance to switch with Tatum and didn't do it. I know Tatum needs to be within arm's length of Tucker within 3 seconds, but how can he turn his head like this and not know where the ball is? Smart ends up fouling him, but Tatum could have been there earlier to force him into something different. This is where stuff got weird. You see, the Celtics ended up committing 16 turnovers in this game, and although they didn't have a turnover problem in the regular season or the first round, there have been issues in the past with taking care of the ball. Jaylen Brown couldn't keep his dribble under control several times on bad decisions, and Derek White shouldn't be bringing the ball up and initiating the offense at this stage of the playoffs. But with the ball in Malcolm Brogdon's hands, you can expect great decisions. Tucker helps on the split screen, but then calls for a needless switch. This puts Harris in a long closeout at a weird angle, but they handle that okay, and Smart does lure 2 defenders, but his pass is off target, eliminating the catch and shoot for Tatum. Now, with less than a second on the clock, this must be a quick pull-up we've seen Brogdon do 1,000 times in his career, but instead, he literally fires a bullet to Maxey? A split second later, and it's a shot clock violation. Sixers ball out of bounds, but instead, it's a lead-changing layup with under 30 seconds. Can you hear me shaking my head? Down 1, the Celtics need to go quick. Nice call to get Tatum spinning on the catch and into free throws to retake the lead. But after all we've gone through to this point, I'm stunned that they let Horford switch onto Harden with this high pick and roll. There was plenty of time for Tatum to have picked up Tucker and been the primary defender. At this point, after those threes they made, I get why they don't want to run a second guy at him, but this is just too easy of a shot. In rhythm, good vision of the rim, and now the Celtics have to come up with something good. Here's what's supposed to happen. They pass to Smart in the low post, who then looks for A, Tatum cutting back door to the basket, or B, Brown coming off this pin down from Horford, who would then slip to the hoop looking for the pass. Before I show you what actually happened, let me explain the Marcus Smart experience. He's a guy who can score, but it can get awkward really quickly. His drives are always an adventure, and in this game, he was able to make a couple of them work, but he tries to do too much. I imagine he thinks he's got more ability than he really does, and it leads to wild plays like this forced drive into the lane and loss of possession. He can make a nice pass for an assist, but he'll also force the ball when it's not open while trying to make a read on the run, or try something fancy that can blow up spectacularly and drive any coach nuts. Plus, he does stuff like this, a completely unnecessary dive for a loose ball he had absolutely no hope of getting, and I think he injured himself from it with this fake hustle. This play was very similar to the final out-of-bounds play, as Smart gets the ball in the post, and while it's supposed to be a flare screen for Horford and a skip pass, he simply doesn't see Tobias Harris had been waiting for it. Based on this terrible turnover, it was remarkable that Mazzulla would trust him again with the game on the line. I can guarantee you the play was supposed to go to either Brown or Tatum. Instead, he never even looks that way until he's stuck up in the air in close quarters with a cutter that he knew was going to be there the whole time. He throws it away, the Sixers make their free throws, and now the prospect of losing home court advantage, while also having to deal with the return of Embiid at some point, has to make the Celtics very worried. Perhaps all their adjustments were made for the big guy in the lineup, and they'll defend better when he's back. But if Harden keeps rolling like this, Boston could end up between a rock and a Harden place.